um, the folks from Windstream. So we got your proposal, and first of all, we know you guys have been very active um, with Cord and following you on Slack and email and so on. But we just wanted to hear a little bit more about what your plans were um, in the in the context of the collaboration proposal. So let me just give you a chance to describe what you're doing, and we can chat about it a little bit.
Sure, this is Brian. Actually, we're trying to decide who is going to start talking first. I think I'm going to try to let Wes take the first shot at it. Wes, are you on the bridge?
I was going to let you take the first shot at it. I
I
certainly
can.
can. I think you have the best perspective, though.
Could I suggest that excuse me, could I suggest that Brian take the first shot because I think he was coming in much more clearly than Wes is.
Sure. So one of the things that we feel like we have a little bit of a unique situation with is we originally when we started getting some virtualization equipment in before we started working on Cord, we started working with Dell, and we have several Dell server hardware, several pieces of Dell server and switch hardware here in our lab that meet up quite well with the Cord requirements and the OCP requirements, but not 100%. And I know right now that a lot of the focus is on keeping the different types of hardware limited because you want to make sure you get a stable 1.0 release. But we also we feel that for Cord to be successful long term, it needs to be able to support a wide variety of hardware. Since we have hardware sitting here and folks that are trying to turn up Cord, along with the relationship right now we have with Dell and getting additional help and input from them, uh, we felt that that's a valuable thing that we can bring to the table and start helping with as you get beyond the 1.0 release to the second and third release. Beyond that, we feel like there's an opportunity to have a tool that can be used both for self-certification of new hardware as well as for diagnostics. So when people go on to Slack or the emails and start saying, I'm having a problem during the install process, if there's a tool that they can run to spit out a generalized set of hardware, generalized set of debugs and information from the install process to post up, it's easier for the folks who are trying to help them to look at specific places where there's either, oh yeah, we've seen this before, or oh, this is something new, or potentially even, oh, this is missing, but we need to start capturing it as we learn. So you can get a generalized output, and if it's a good install, you can use that generalized output to say, hey, this particular set of hardware ran through all these steps. Here's the output from this tool. We know it installs cleanly, so we can put it on the list of hardware that's been tested
So
by the
you
community.
would see this
Go ahead.
as a validation suite, test suite.
A validation as well as diagnostic test suite. So from the router world, think about like a show tech support from Cisco that goes through all the different debugs and outputs that a support crew may need to help understand what's going wrong. You could have something like that, so you have a single file that gets uploaded both for validation as well as for diagnostics if something doesn't work right.
Great, great. So just for myself, having the Dell support and integration would be great just in its own right. But I like the idea of the diagnostic tool. What can we do, the TST, or more narrowly, what help can we provide to make this make you successful?
But well, the first part is what we're already receiving. I mean, David Bainbridge has been incredibly helpful to us already with us learning about what we have to do to make our equipment work, and some of the diagnostics we've done. Uh, Other than that, it's just a matter of help and understanding on different various pieces as we understand the process to understand where a tool like this would need to either be continually integrated or interface with the install process to be able to get back information and be a useful tool.
Ali, do you have any thoughts on integrating this into Jenkins or the build process generally?
Well, I'd like to understand a little more about the tool. Are you thinking more of a verification tool that would run on a host before deploying code?
I would think it would be able to run at any point on it to be able to understand where what the status of the servers are. So if you have a failed install where you get back like right now, we run into a problem every so often where bind locks up and the harvester doesn't actually get the information into bind. So all we get back is a failure inside of the deploy scripts. Well, we've seen it twice now, so we know if we see that, oh well, go restart the bind process and restart the deploy process to be able to fix it. But to have a tool where if you just get a generic failure, to go back and look at all the pieces and give back information, what's the status of the bind process? Did it get all the stuff out of the harvester? All the things basically that if you go read in the Slack, some of the basic stuff that David asks for every time when someone's asking a question, I would see there's a lot of value in him being able to say, hey, run this command, and this tool is going to go interrogate the server that's having a problem. It's going to go look at whatever information is being kept by the install process and the state of the machines, and be able to get back a standardized file that you can parse to see if it's a problem that's been seen before or a new problem.
Okay, so this is kind of in line with the mail I sent this morning. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see it, but basically it's a tool called server spec that defines the state that you would expect the server to be in after some sort of automation or whatever, and you define it. You define what processes you expect to be running, what Docker containers, what files should be where, and what content they should have, and so you can validate the end state of a server, and you just run. You take your spec and you run it against the server, and it'll generate a report telling you what's there and not there. It's kind of
and I think they're complementary because I think some of the difference that Brian was talking about, taking the bind example, is the processes are all there and running, which is what the server spec will determine. The files are all there and running. But what they've seen sometimes, and I'd love to know why, and solve it actually, was that even though the process was running, for some reason bind hadn't reloaded at the right time to capture, in the case they're seeing, the security, the DNSSEC key. And so it wasn't responding correctly. Everything from a server spec position was running absolutely correct, but there's still a runtime error based on the state. And so I think the file that they've been talking about is important because it is the questions that I ask over and over and over and being looked up. So I think these two things are complementary.
So
right? Everything can be correct from server spec position, but still not working.
So that's possible. It's possible that you would want something a little more than server spec to tell you, but I would suggest that we start with something like server spec first, and then add on to it later if we figure out that we need some more runtime reporting.
So could I observe that this also sounds like at a different level, at the server and switch spec level, so to speak, analogous to the troubleshooting page that is on the wiki. That one tends to be addressing another set of issues that we were answering over and over again, having to do with building something behind a corporate firewall. And so it strikes me as a diagnostic / troubleshooting version of that, except at the switch and server level. And that might be one place, in the short term to get something up that people could start using. So, Brian, do you know what I'm talking about?
Only partially.
So on the build wiki page, there's a link to a troubleshooting a build, and like I said, it tends to be a little. It's less focused on the full pod and more focused on the single node pod, where the biggest hurdle was connectivity from inside of a corporate setting. Now, maybe, but it struck me as a similar kind of thing because it grew out of answering the same question over and over again on Slack. And while there is now a web page with troubleshooting on it, a lot of those checks got embedded inside of the build process. And I'm wondering if the same thing would be the ultimate outcome of what you're proposing.
I don't think it would be outside of spec for that. If it's something that's repeatedly found to be a problem, it would help to help to get it inside of the automation scripts.
Right.
I mean, you can spend forever trying to have an automation script do everything. I would say it can be a very difficult task to try to have it be intelligent enough to find all of them. But if it's a consistent thing, having it put in as an extra piece inside the automation scripts definitely would help. It would help to understand what it is you're running into often.
Yep, absolutely.
But yeah, to Ali's point, I think this is complementary or potentially a phase 2 of something similar to the tool that he's proposing in the email chain.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. I think it'd be kind of cool to start with first formalize in the form of something that we can run against the server. So I'm suggesting server spec because it already does all the work for us. To define the desired end state of, or even like the desired state after each phase of the deploy of the compute, no, the servers or whichever device we're working against, and that'll at least give us the first step. And then if there's runtime issues that we run into, then those can be added after.
So this is Jay. It sounds like to me that the server spec will kind of let us know where in the process we're failing, and kind of what we've been talking about for this tool will help us identify perhaps how it's failing at that step.
Yeah, sure. And I think those two are both valuable. I mean, I don't know if you guys had a look at server spec. It's pretty flexible. So it'll tell you what is missing, or what did not happen correctly, or what did not get deployed correctly. It may not tell you how, but I think to determine how, you have to be it's based on experience. So the how part would be always evolving.
So staying with the bind example, is my understanding correct, Ali, that server spec could say if bind is running or not correctly, but it couldn't really say that it has loaded the latest running with the latest config file. Is that fair?
Unless we have some sort of definition of what the latest config file is, then no, it can't tell you.
I mean, we could actually have say the latest config file has been deployed, but I don't think server spec knows that if it's been reloaded since that config file has been written. And I think these two things are complementary again and not orthogonal. It's quite possible that Windstream, if they have an interest and they see a need on their deployment, they could go off and kind of build this diagnostics tool they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. All I'm suggesting is that we do it in a step-by-step process. Build first the part that tells you that you have everything in the right place and the things are running correctly, and then have something on top of that would verify the dynamic state. That's all. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that we don't do one or the other. Does that make sense?
It does. What I'm struggling with is if Windstream's interested in doing this diagnostic tool, they may be interested in doing that and less interested in doing the server spec stuff, which we have to do anyway. So I'm not saying maybe they can be done in parallel. I don't necessarily think they have to be done one versus the other. If they're interested in doing the server spec stuff, that's a different conversation. But that's something they have to decide what is more valuable to them in their deployments and what they think would be their priorities.
That's fine. That's fine, and maybe we could hear from Windstream, but I mean, the way I look at it is I think they're complementary, but one is kind of a base for the other, I would think. No? Yes? Maybe? Perhaps?
Uh, I think it's up to Windstream, right? It's kind of in
Yeah,
their
yeah.
court where they want to go, and
Sure.
regardless of which way we want to go, I think we do have to start the service spec stuff too,
Yeah.
as I think
I
that's
think it
kind
would
of
be also a good test to see how far you can take service spec. Because I mean, I've looked at it, I've used it a little bit, but sure it can do a lot more than what I've looked at. So maybe it can like uh, it can query a bind process and see what is actually loaded.
yeah, and that's why I think this is interesting. If service spec can do that type of stuff too, and I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure it can. I'm just saying maybe it can. But I mean, the nice thing about it is that it's just a Ruby script, really. And so I guess you can add whatever you want to it. Did
Well,
we
so Jay
lose?
and Brian, you've you're planning to build this. You haven't started yet. Where are you? Is it something that you would consider looking at server spec and building on that to the extent it made sense? Or, I mean, this is just from our point of view, trying to maximize or the tools we have.
Yeah, I don't. We haven't started building anything yet. This was mostly us brainstorming on how we could, what we could do to try to help move along and make our lives easier as well as everybody else's in the process. So we haven't really started building anything to this point yet. We wanted to get the proposal out there, both in front of you all as well as in front of our executive team to be able to move forward full time working on it. As far as the actual way to do it, I would personally expect this to be exactly this kind of conversation to start up on the exact implementation. I wouldn't want us to be the only ones developing something and then bringing a partially baked product for everybody else to start going, well, I wish you hadn't done this or I wish you'd done that. I'd rather see it get input from the community and then take all the good ideas and move it together, like using server spec as a place to start. I think is a great place to start at, right? Start doing the investigation there, see how much you can branch out from there, how we can move forward with it, instead of just trying to do something from our own limited viewpoint and use cases. Having it be more community driven is better to me.
Perfect. I think that's really what the crux of this whole discussion has been, is that we're just anxious to have to get value from this as soon as we can, and that we're all contributing to it, as opposed to you go away and come back in 6 months with something that no one had seen before. I think, but that sounds perfect what you just said.
So this is David. It sounds like for next steps, I mean, it sounds like there might be some technical details to sort out, but for next steps, we've approved the proposal, and I can work with Windstream to get them signed up officially.
Oh yeah, that part's good.
Okay. Right, I'll do that today.
Is there anything else, guys? Now
And
you're welcome.
do we have a standard process for kind of getting these proposals out? I mean, is it? So I'm going to go back to my history. I have history with Open Daylight, and when new proposals are done under Open Daylight, there is an official kind of wiki standard template, if you will, they fill out so that the community can see what's going on and understand the project itself.
So yes, yes and no. There is a process for collaborators, and they actually filled out a template of information, which is pretty minimal, and so that it's valuable to talk to people instead of just depend on that. That as a collaborator, that's not necessarily equal to another thing, which is called a project, for which there is an online presence. Whether this is worthy of spinning off its own project isn't obvious. Those tend to be kind of larger umbrellas. This kind of strikes me as contributing to such a core thing that I'm not sure it meets that standard. I don't know. And to some extent, that's still a little bit ill-defined.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of where does the community go to find out information about the effort that Windstream is undertaking? And that's the question, right?
Well, let me put that one on David, who.
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, I think the more transparent we can be, the better. I think there's all sorts of good reasons for doing that. So right now, and I think we could probably advertise it more. Right now, if people want to follow the core TST mailing list, discussions about proposals are posted there, and so people can see what's coming in. Going forward, we're starting a core community spotlight series where every month we'll be talking about some sort of activity a collaborator has done where we go into a lot more detail about that. We haven't started. We've done that. We've started that for ONOS. We haven't started that for Core yet, but we're getting geared up for that.
Yeah.
And I think, we're welcome if people from a collaborator wants to share out what they're doing. We're happy to, promote that on, our Twitter feed and other channel feeds. And we will do.
And a lot of it is when someone comes to the community and try to install Core and they go, I'm having this problem. What would be really great is a diagnostic tool. Where do they go to find out that that's already been done? Or, before they go and say, hey, I'm going to go create a diagnostic tool as a project.
Well, for one thing, we put the diagnostic tool on it's just pervasive in our build information.
Yeah.
I think the current model, and we can change it, is that's orthogonal to the fact that Windstream is a collaborator.
Yes, I agree. It's just where do I search? Where do I Google search to find out these projects, or where do I go to get the list of projects that are being done within the community?
There is a projects page. They're off hanging,
Okay.
maybe buried, but hanging off the TST is a projects page.
Okay.
Now, and again, projects is orthogonal to collaborators, and in this case, this is so mainstream that I would like to see it just promoted in every possible way on all of our build material.
Okay.
So Brian, just very specifically, if you wanted to start adding, server diagnostic page and start populating with every little tidbit of things that you start, either you're proposing, you're considering, you've done. Here's the preliminary version of the tool, whatever. That would be great.
Okay.
Or Brian/Jay, whoever is the right one to run with that. Anything else on this? Okay, thanks, guys. You're welcome to stay. We don't really have much more of an agenda, so let me open that up to Ali. Did you have any other things you wanted to talk about?
Yeah. Well, two things. One, I'm gonna get rid of submodules probably today, and that means that people will have to transition to using repo instead.
Can we hold off on that until we get the first release officially cut?
I mean, we can. It just makes no difference whether we hold off or not. But sure, I don't have a big. It doesn't make a big difference given that the first release is all housed in the 1.0 branch, and so it doesn't change anything.
So this is only in master. This is not won't affect 1.0.
Yeah, we're not gonna move it. We're not gonna backport 1.0. No.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
I thought that was the case.
But I mean, if people have a preference to hold off until 1.0 is officially released, I'm okay with that. And the other thing is, could we have some sort of a page where we can put agenda items in, or something to that effect?
Sure. Trying to think of the right way to do that. I guess we should just start accumulating meeting. There's a place that we accumulate meeting notes, and maybe for the very next meeting, it's the agenda or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll figure something like that out and let you know.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
Anyone else have anything else? All right. Thanks. Quick work of it today. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.